All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Navigating the Female Mind, a red-pilled guide for men, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Navigating the Female Mind, a field guide for men who still notice reality, the gynocentric guillotine, dismantling the Marxist class war, the UBI scam, and the pavement test to revivicate Western masculinity. You have been sold a bill of goods by a civilization that is actively eating its own young, and the receipt is written in the blood of your forefathers. Look at the wreckage around you, the living spirit of the West, that glorious engine of logic and virtue that built the greatest cultures in the known universe, is being choked to death by the gnarled roots of cultural Marxism and the suffocating vines of toxic femininity. We are told that the traditional hierarchies, the mixed constitution, the apprenticeship mastery ladder, the nuclear family, are oppressive structures, yet their removal has left us drowning in a sea of incompetence and envy. They call it progress. I call it the systematic castration of the competent male. You see it in the suicide rates, the divorce courts, the homeless shelters filled with men who worked 40 years only to be tossed aside like a broken tool. The spell of ignorance must be broken. The blue pill is not a comfort. It is a cyanide capsule disguised as etiquette. We are going to utilize the trivium to dismantle this Babylon, starting with the economic absurdity that passes for class war today. The neo-Marxist narrative screams that the middle class is an oppressor, but let us apply the iron logic of the syllogism. Western stability requires subsidiarity and private property. Neo-Marxism demands their abolition. Therefore, neo-Marxism is an existential toxin, not a solution. You feel this betrayal when a woman asks if you support universal basic income to gauge your social awareness. This is not a date, it is an audit. She is checking to see if you are a pliable drone willing to fund her consumption through infinite taxation, which destroys the incentive to produce. She is employing a dual mating strategy, looking for a provider to extract resources from while her biology craves the dominance of a man who refuses to pay the Danegeld. If you nod along to this economic illiteracy to get laid, you are not being nice. You are violating the transcendental of the true and betraying your own sovereignty. This deception extends to the very pavement you walk on and the gavel that presumes to judge you. You are expected to walk on the traffic side of the sidewalk, a ritual of chivalry that supposedly proves your protective instinct. Yet the family courts will strip you of your children and wealth without a shred of due process. The moment the relationship sours, they demand you die for a society that views your victimhood as a joke. Believe all women is a logical contradiction that destroys innocent until proven guilty. Yet it is the dogma of our time. It is a gamma bias that frames male pain as trivial and female fragility as paramount. We will expose the evolutionary biology behind this charade, the way female hypergamy utilizes feigned weakness to manipulate your biological protector instincts, and we will replace your servile compliance with the cardinal virtue of fortitude. Put away the chivalry for those who despise you. It is time to rearm your mind with the trivium and reclaim the masculine heritage that is your birthright. The bastion of ruin, neo-Marxist class warfare, and the erasure of the patriarchal middle class. Class derives from the Latin classis, referring to a summons or a group called to arms, specifically the fleet of Rome. It did not signify a grievance group to be pitied or an enemy to be liquidated. It denoted a functional stratum within the mixed constitution, essential for the stability of the state. When the neo-Marxists screech about class warfare, they are not engaging in political economy, but perverting language to serve a pathology of destruction. They have taken a term denoting order and duty, the Roman census that organized men for the defense of the republic, and twisted it into a bludgeon to bludgeon the very men who built that republic. The mixed constitution of the West, balancing monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, relies on a robust property-holding middle class to act as the ballast against tyranny. By weaponizing class to mean oppressor versus oppressed, these cultural arsonists seek to dissolve this ballast, aiming to capsize the ship of state and drown the patriarchal middle class in a sea of manufactured guilt and enforced equality of outcome. Consider the historical parallel of the French Revolution not as a fight for liberty, but as the original Bastille of the mind, where the madness of the mob was unleashed against the competent. The Jacobins did not merely target the king. They systematically dismantled the civil society associations, the guilds, the church charities, the local lodges that stood between the individual and the state. Today, the guillotine has been replaced by the HR department and the corporate cancel culture firing squad. The modern Jacobin does not wear a red cap. She wears a pantsuit and holds a degree in gender studies, using the mechanisms of sensitivity training and diversity, equity, and inclusion to decapitate any man who dares to assert competence or biological reality. The blood on the floor is virtual, but the destruction of the man's livelihood is absolute, and the terror is just as effective as the reign of terror in silencing dissent. When you confront these ideologues with the hard data of male suicide rates, the 80% initiation of divorce by women, or the plummeting birth rates in the West, they immediately resort to the logical fallacies of the weak-minded. You will hear the tu quoque, you're just bitter because you can't get a date, or the ad hominem, that's a toxic, misogynistic incel talking. These are not arguments. They are the screams of a dying philosophy. This is gamma bias in action, the tendency to misinterpret information in a way that favors women or feminism, exaggerating female victimhood while minimizing male suffering. You must armor yourself in the grammar of the trivium. When they attack your character, recognize it as a concession of defeat. They have no logic, so they attack the man speaking the truth. If their philosophy were sound, they would debate the premises, not attack the proponent. The fact that they rush to silence you proves they fear the light of reason. We must use formal logic to dismantle the oppressor-oppressed dialectic, for it is a house of cards built on quicksand. The neo-Marxist claims that all power relations are oppressive and must be overthrown. However, consider the syllogism. Major premise: all claims to power are inherently oppressive and corrupt. Minor premise: the neo-Marxist ideology seeks to claim absolute political and cultural power to enforce its vision. Conclusion: therefore, neo-Marxism is inherently oppressive and corrupt. The dialectic consumes itself. By their own definition, they are the tyrants they purport to fight. They do not seek to end oppression. They seek to become the sole oppressors, replacing the meritocratic hierarchy of the West with a hierarchy of victimhood, where the most broken soul wears the crown. This is the lie that only the sharp blade of logic can sever. This modern class war is nothing less than a targeted strike against the competent male, specifically designed to dismantle the apprenticeship mastery ladder that built our civilization. In the guilds of old, a man proved his worth through actual hands-on work, through action, through the creation of value, through the slow, arduous climb from apprentice to master. The modern corporate state, hijacked by feminist and Marxist theory, despises this because it cannot be controlled by emotional appeal. They have replaced the apprenticeship ladder with credentialism, a maze of university degrees and DEI certifications that serve not the market or truth, but the woke mob. They hate the master carpenter, the master coder, the master plumber, because these men do not need the state to survive. A man who can build a house or write code is dangerous to the fragile ego of the mediocre academic who can only deconstruct. They must drag the master down to the level of the apprentice to feel safe, ensuring that excellence is punished as privilege. At the root of this assault lies a profound satanic envy. It is not desire for justice that drives the feminist or the Marxist to tear down statues and rewrite history. It is a burning resentment of the good, the true, and the beautiful. They look at the skyscrapers, the symphonies, and the scientific achievements of the patriarchal West, and they feel a smallness in their souls that they cannot extinguish. Since they cannot build, they must destroy. This is the crab bucket mentality institutionalized. If I cannot be a great man, then no man shall be great. They pathologize the male drive to build and conquer as toxic masculinity, unaware that their envy is the most toxic poison of all. They reject the transcendental good because they have refused to cultivate it within themselves, preferring the shadows of resentment to the light of achievement. Let us turn finally to the unavoidable logic of cultural decay, a syllogism that leaves no room for the blue-pilled delusions of the modern age. Major premise: Western civilization is structurally dependent on the nuclear family and private property, functioning through the principle of subsidiarity, matters handled by the smallest, most local authority possible. Minor premise: Neo-Marxism and its feminist vanguards explicitly seek to abolish the nuclear family, the bourgeois unit, and the private property rights that sustain it. Conclusion: therefore, Neo-Marxism is not a political alternative, but an existential toxin to Western civilization that must be excised. The data screams this truth: where the nuclear family dissolves, poverty, crime, and state dependency rise. The patriarchal middle class is not the enemy, it is the only thing holding back the chaos. We must revivicate the mus maiorum, the customs of the ancestors, reclaiming our duty to build, protect, and speak the truth, breaking the spell of ignorance before the lights of the West go out forever. The logical annihilation of the neo-Marxist dialectic is a triumph of the trivium, yet it remains a hollow victory if we cannot recognize the serpent when it whispers in our ear. The violation of subsidiarity and the rejection of natural law are not merely academic errors, they are the guiding principles of the modern, liberated woman who confuses her consumption with contribution. I present the following encounter to illustrate how the perverse ideology of universal basic income has poisoned the well of romance, turning a simple dinner into a tribunal for her financial insecurities. The pittance of provision, interrogating her future and the UBI shibboleth. I sat across from a woman who possessed the physical beauty of a classical statue, but the economic understanding of a confused hamster, nursing an overpriced cocktail that she expected the eventual patriarchy to subsidize. She looked me dead in the eye, her expression a practiced mix of solemnity and entitlement, and asked if I believed universal basic income was the moral imperative of our time. This was not a question seeking dialectic enlightenment. It was a shibboleth, a loyalty test to the cult of equity. I responded by asking her who, precisely, would pay for the sun to shine on everyone, regardless of their contribution to the harvest. She recoiled as if I had slapped her, sputtering about human rights and dignity, incapable of grasping that dignity is derived from the hérite of one's labor, not the issuance of state fiat. It was a perfect crystallization of the solipsistic plague, the belief that the resources of the productive class are a stagnant pond from which she may indefinitely drink, rather than a river that must be kept flowing by the exertion of men. When a woman interrogates a man about whether he aligns with her future, she is rarely invoking the Aristotelian concept of shared eudaimonia or a partnership of equals in the pursuit of the good. She is conducting an audit. Underneath the flowery language of compatibility lies a cold, calculating assessment of your utility as a drone in her economic hive. This is a gross violation of the virtue of justice, which demands that we render to each his due. In her distorted framework, her needs, which are invariably wants disguised as necessities by the welfare state, constitute a claim on your life and labor. To the rational man, this is not a foundation for romance. It is the preliminary paperwork for indentured servitude. She is not asking if you will walk beside her in the light of truth. She is asking if you will carry the luggage of her poor choices while she critiques your stride. We must contrast this entitlement with the iron laws of natural law, a tradition understood by the architects of the West, but forgotten by the denizens of the modern shopping mall. Aristotle recognized that hierarchy is not a social construct to be dismantled, but a fundamental reality of existence. Some are gold, some are silver, and some are bronze. And no amount of Marxist alchemy can turn lead into gold. The red pill is nothing more than the acceptance of this reality, a rejection of the blank slate fantasy that suggests every human being is an interchangeable economic unit capable of infinite output if only given enough free money. This utopianism is a mental poison. It denies the biological and spiritual reality that competence, drive, and talent are distributed unevenly, and that those who possess the genius to build the future must not be shackled to those who possess only the capacity to consume it. When faced with the UBI delusion in the wild, do not debate on the terms set by the leftist. Instead, employ the Socratic method to dismantle her pretensions like a surgeon removing a tumor. Force her to defend the premise rather than the conclusion. Ask her, if I seize the product of a man's labor to give it to you, is that theft? If she says no, ask what happens when the man stops working. If she admits it is theft, ask why the need of the thief outweighs the right of the producer. You must lead her, step by agonizing step, to the realization that she is not advocating for social justice, but for armed robbery by proxy. It is hilarious to watch the cognitive dissonance flicker across their faces as the realization dawns that their moral high ground is actually a pit of quicksand built on the confiscated wealth of the men they claim to despise. This economic ignorance is shielded from scrutiny by gamma bias, a pervasive framing trick in the media and culture where women's financial desires are sanctified as survival or nurturing, while men's financial ambitions are pathologized as greed or toxic capitalism. Evolutionary biology explains this divergence clearly. Women are the selectors, prioritizing resource security, while men are the competitors, risking everything for status and access. The cultural Marxists have warped this into a narrative where a woman wanting a bailout for her bad decisions is a victim of circumstance, but a man wanting to keep the fruits of his 12-hour day is a parasite. You must see through this. She is looking for a dad to provide the resources she cannot secure herself, while secretly reserving her attraction for the cad who offers the genes she cannot command. A rational man, armed with the knowledge of the dual mating strategy, refuses to play either role. He will not be the beast of burden nor the sperm donor. He will be the master of his own destiny. To capitulate to this nonsense, to nod and smile when she espouses economic fallacies just to preserve the peace of the evening, is a betrayal of the transcendental, of the true. Masculinity is grounded in the commitment to objective reality, to the logos that governs the universe. When you lie to appease a woman's solipsism, you sever your connection to the divine and participate in the unraveling of the social fabric. You are teaching her that her delusions are valid and that truth is negotiable if the price is right. This is the path to the destruction of civilization. If you cannot speak the truth to a woman across a dinner table, how can you be expected to speak it to a tyrant? Do not betray your own intellect for the fleeting hope of intimacy. The only intimacy worth having is that which is rooted in the shared recognition of what is real. Consider the syllogism that utterly obliterates the UBI fantasy, a logical bomb that leaves nothing but smoking rubble where her argument used to stand. Major premise, universal basic income, requires infinite taxation to sustain indefinite payouts to a growing population. Minor premise, infinite taxation, destroys the incentive to produce, as the producer sees no correlation between his effort and his reward. Conclusion, therefore, UBI inevitably destroys the host economy, resulting in poverty for all, including the woman who demanded it. This is not a matter of opinion, it is the mathematical certainty of cause and effect. Her questions about your alignment with her future are merely tests to see if you are economically illiterate enough to be fleeced. The man who sees this and calls it out with a sneer and a fact is the man who cannot be conquered. I have stripped the judicial bench of its pretense to impartiality, revealing the judge as a biological agent executing a primitive directive to conserve the womb at the expense of the male. This hardwiring does not merely skew perspective, it manufactures a grotesque reality where the apex fallacy renders the concept of a male victim logically impossible in the eyes of the court. We witness this pathology in the tragic spectacle of the disposable dad, a man whose suffering is erased by the court's solipsistic focus on the female, and in the subversion of our legal language itself. The term testimony originates from the Latin testis, the virile witness who stakes his honor on the truth. Yet this masculine standard of evidence has been discarded to accommodate the subjective, uncorroborated whispers of the protected sex. The gavel has become a tool not of justice, but of genocentric preservation, proving that due process is dead, sacrificed to the lizard-brain gods of the Pleistocene. The gavel of genocentrism, judicial indifference, and the mockery of due process. Consider the judge sitting upon his high bench, draped in the robes of authority, yet beneath the wig and the gown, his neural architecture is obeying a telegram from the Pleistocene epoch. Evolutionary psychology exposes the brutal reality of the courtroom. The judge is not an agent of abstract justice, but a biological machine hardwired to view the female as the limiting reproductive resource and the male as the expendable protector. In the state of nature, losing a woman meant losing the tribe's future. Losing a man was merely a logistical hiccup. This instinct, while adaptive for hunter-gatherers huddled in caves, is a catastrophic pathology in a high-tech civilization built on the transcendentals of truth and logic. When a gavel bangs to favor a woman solely due to her sex, it is not justice. It is the primitive lizard brain hijacking the legal system to protect the womb at the expense of the man. This biological determinism mocks the very concept of blind justice, revealing that the scales are weighted by DNA, not by the weight of evidence. We witness this maladaptive instinct in the primary aggressor policies that infect our police departments like a virus, a direct result of the Duluth model's Marxist framing of domestic relations. I have observed the proceedings where a disposable dad, battered and bleeding, calls the police for protection, only to be handcuffed and hauled away because of his physical size. The officers operating under feminist dogma look for size disparity rather than actual aggression. They see a man and they see an oppressor. They see a woman and they see a victim regardless of the facts on the ground. This is the apex fallacy in action. The assumption that because men hold the apex positions of power in society, no individual man can ever be a victim. The court dismisses his pain as trivial, stripping him of his home and his children, proving that in the eyes of the law, a man's suffering is merely the price of doing business in a genocentric state. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we must trace the etymology of our legal language. The word testimony derives from the Latin testis, meaning witness, which is historically linked to the male anatomy. In the Roman mind, only a man possessed the fortitude and the biological stake to bear witness to the truth. His word was his bond, secured by his honor. The legal system once demanded this masculine standard of evidence, demanding testis, objective, corroborated truth. Modern jurisprudence has subverted this ancient wisdom. It has severed the link between testimony and biological verification, privileging the subjective, emotional incontinence of the female voice over the requirement for corroboration. By elevating uncorroborated female accusation to the status of Holy Writ, the courts have castrated the concept of evidence, replacing the objective witness with the fields-based narrative of the oppressed. This leads us to the logical absurdity of the feminist mantra, "Believe all women." Let us apply the iron law of non-contradiction to this premise. We operate under the foundational tenet of Western law, innocent until proven guilty. If we accept "believe all women," we are asserting that an accusation is equivalent to a conviction. If accusation equals guilt, then evidence is irrelevant. If evidence is irrelevant, then the presumption of innocence is a lie. These two propositions cannot coexist in the same universe. To accept one is to negate the other. Believe all women is not a plea for justice. It is a logical nullity designed to bypass the dialectic search for truth. It is the weaponization of hysteria, a tool of tyranny that allows the state to bypass the Constitution and destroy a man without a shred of proof, based solely on the word of a woman, empowered by a wicked state. Behind this judicial farce lies a racketeering enterprise so massive it makes the mafia look like a lemonade stand. The domestic violence industry. This is not a charitable endeavor. It is a multi-billion-dollar Marxist machine fueled by federal grants and via WR, Violence Against Women Act, funding. The equation is simple. No male villains, no funding. To keep the money flowing, they must manufacture oppressors. They use the specter of toxic masculinity to justify their existence, conflating stern discipline or a mere raised voice with abuse. It is a critical theory con job that frames the nuclear family as a patriarchal prison that must be dismantled, using the family courts as the demolition crew. This industry profits from the destruction of men, the alienation of fathers from children, and the misery of broken homes. It is a parasitic entity feeding on the corpse of civil society, selling the lie of female oppression to the highest bidder, who enables this corruption. The white knight judge, a psychological profile in cowardice and vice. He has taken an oath to the Constitution to the abstract good, but he betrays it for the transient dopamine hit of social approval. He is terrified of the feminist shriek of being labeled a misogynist in the local press or losing his seat in the next election. In the classical canon, this is the total corruption of the virtue of prudence. Prudence is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. This judge lacks prudence. He is governed by fear and the desire to be seen as a protector of women, even if it means sacrificing a man on the altar of political correctness. He is a weak-willed administrator of tyranny, trading his integrity for pats on the back from the very ideologues who despise him, ensuring that the law serves feelings rather than facts. We can distill this systemic failure into a single, irrefutable syllogism. Major premise: due process requires the impartial evaluation of evidence and the presumption of innocence for all parties. Minor premise: modern family courts operate under the tender years doctrine in disguise, favoring the maternal bond and female testimony regardless of factual evidence or male conduct. Conclusion: therefore, modern family courts are illegal and void of moral legitimacy. The system is not broken, it is operating exactly as the Marxists intended, to subvert the natural order. The only remedy is a return to the mixed constitution that birthed the glory of the West. We must re-enshrine patriarchal authority, not as a tyranny, but as a necessary balance to gynocentric chaos. Just as the paterfamilias secured the Roman hearth, we must restore the headship of the father to stabilize society. We require a legal system based on natural law, subsidiarity, and the understanding that freedom requires order. And order requires the masculine hand of authority to restrain the destructive caprice of the feminine imperative. This judicial subversion is merely the institutional skeleton of a spiritual disease that seeks to dissolve the ordo naturalis of the West, infecting the civitas with a toxin that obscures the true, the good, and the beautiful. The Marxist pathology that dismantled the paterfamilias in the courts does not rest. It invades the street, weaponizing feigned fragility to extract your submission as a tax for mere proximity. We must recognize that the demand for male disposability is a constant feature of this rotting civilization, manifesting not just in the theft of your rights, but in the petty tyranny of social expectation. The battlefield shifts instantly from the gavel to the gutter, where the next test of your masculine frame awaits. Behind the curtain of chivalry, the pavement test, evolutionary biology, and the illusion of fragility. You are strolling down the avenue, the evening air is crisp, and suddenly you feel a subtle shove or worse, a withering glare from the woman beside you. You have failed the pavement test. You committed the sin of walking on the wrong side of the sidewalk, forcing her to walk nearest to the traffic. This moment, sold to us by the sentimentalists as a relic of romantic protection, is in fact a crude compliance test, a biopsycho-op designed to establish dominance hierarchy under the guise of fragility. This is not about her safety, it is about your submission. We must apply the razor of logic to this supposedly romantic gesture and dissect the evolutionary biology driving it. For what looks like a request for protection, is actually a strategic deployment of the damsel archetype to trigger your biological disposability. The modern woman is not a Victorian fainting spell waiting to happen, yet she weaponizes the illusion of fragility to trigger the male protector instinct. This is a wicked evolutionary trick. In the state of nature, women were the reproductive bottleneck. Men were the disposable labor and defense. Hypergamy, the female drive to secure the best genetic material and resources, requires a constant stream of fitness tests. By demanding you occupy the danger zone, she is subconsciously checking, will this male sacrifice his physical safety for my comfort? If you comply, you signal that her existence is more valuable than yours, reinforcing a gynocentric frame where you are the utility and she is the beneficiary. This is the toxic femininity we detest. The manipulation of male biology to extract resources and deference without returning virtue or loyalty. Let us subject the safety argument to the rigors of the trivium, specifically logic and grammar. Is it actually safer for her to walk on the inside? In a modern urban environment with dedicated curbs, traffic lanes, and sidewalk barriers, the statistical probability of a vehicle jumping the curb and striking the person closest to the road is negligible compared to the hazards of 14th century cobblestones where sewage might splash you or a carriage wheel might clip your heel. The risk distribution in a modern city center does not justify the ritualized displacement of the male. Therefore, the insistence on this behavior is irrational and purely symbolic. It is a vestigial social ritual stripped of its original pragmatic context, leaving only the raw power dynamic. She commands, you obey. This dynamic is reinforced by the cultural Marxists and their media lapdogs through the mechanism of gamma bias. In romantic comedies and TV dramas, the man who throws himself between his date and a puddle of bus splash is portrayed as the paragon of masculine virtue, a hero worthy of her love. Conversely, if a woman demands the safe spot or asserts her dominance in public space, she is framed as empowered or high maintenance in a way that is celebrated rather than critiqued. The media presents a distorted reality where female desire is the moral law of the universe and male service is the only path to redemption. This is the cultural rot we must purge, the narrative that male utility is the highest moral good. Consider the etymology of chivalry. It stems from the French chevalier, horseman, and Latin cabalist, nag. It was a code of martial conduct for the knightly class, a guild of warriors bound by honor to one another and to their god. Here is a syllogism to dismantle the modern misunderstanding. Major premise, chivalry was a code of martial conduct and mutual respect between military equals, knights. Minor premise, modern women are not knights nor are they martial equals, but are legally equal citizens protected by the state. Conclusion, modern chivalry, defined as unearned sacrifice from men to women, is not a virtue, but a submission strategy. You are not a knight-errant. She is not a feudal lady. We live in a constitutional republic with due process, not a feudal manner. To act the knight is to accept the status of a serf. When she demands you walk in the street, she is attempting to seize the frame. In the dialectic of the interaction, she posits the thesis, my comfort outweighs your safety. If you accept the premise and step into the gutter, you validate her superiority. The remedy is not anger, but the weaponization of humor and dominance, the tools of the rhetorician. You must flip the script. When she pushes you toward the traffic, laugh in her face. Do I look like a crash test dummy to you? Or I didn't realize you were the Queen of England? This reestablishes the frame. You are a man of value, not a sacrificial lamb. You expose her entitlement for the irrationality that it is. This is the application of logic to social dynamics, dismantling the emotional manipulation. We must replace the servile virtue of protectiveness, which has become a euphemism for gynocentric subservience, with the cardinal virtue of fortitude. Fortitude is not about blindly throwing oneself into harm's way for a creature that despises you. It is the strength of mind to endure social pressure, to stand firm in the truth, and to reject the path of least resistance. It takes true courage to say no to a woman's frame control. It takes true arete, excellence, to refuse to be a doormat. The modern world demands you be a docile consumer and an apologetic male. Fortitude demands you be an unyielding pillar of rationality. Do not protect those who would dismantle your civilization. protect your own dignity. This leads us to the closing praxeology, the necessary action you must take. Withdraw your protective instinct from a society that holds you in contempt. Stop saving damsels who view you as the dragon. Redirect that furious, masculine energy into the apprenticeship mastery ladder of the self. Do not walk in the gutter for her, walk the path of the Stoic sage. Build your body, sharpen your mind, and master your craft. Let the streets fill with the unheeded demands of those who offer nothing but their own entitlement. By reclaiming your biological imperatives for your own ascent, you break the spell of ignorance. You become the man who cannot be manipulated, because he values his own sovereignty more than the fleeting approval of the fairer sex. You become the living spirit of Western civilization, resurrected, rational, strong, and free. You stand now at the precipice of a new understanding, armed with the cold, hard steel of logic and the searing heat of unvarnished truth. We have walked together through the wreckage of the neo-Marxist project, exposing their class war for what it truly is. A satanic envy directed at the competent, the patriarchal, the virtuous builders of the West. You see now that the universal basic income is not a safety net, but a leash designed to turn you into a docile gelding for the state, a demand you reject with the stern no of a free man who understands natural law. When she asks if you align with her future, you hear the ticking of a biological clock measuring your utility as a drone. And you are wise to the dual mating strategy that seeks to extract your labor while offering only contempt in return. You have witnessed the gavel of gynocentrism smash the very concept of justice. The family courts are not halls of equity, but abattoirs of the male spirit, where due process is strangled by the tender years doctrine and the lie that men are solely oppressors. The statistics are a scream in the silence. Men commit suicide at rates that would trigger a national emergency if the genders were reversed, yet the media yawns because the victims possess a Y chromosome. You have seen the pavement test for the manipulative compliance shakedown. It is a feeble attempt to hack your protector instincts and force you into a subservient frame. This is the reality of the modern Babylon, a system that aborts the future, imports foreign chaos, and demands you walk into traffic to appease the fragile ego of a culture that hates you. But the spell is broken. You possess the trivium now, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, to dismantle the gamma bias and the cultural Marxist framing that seeks to enslave your mind. You are the inheritor of the mos maiorum, the carrier of the living spirit that built the aqueducts and the cathedrals. Go forth and rebuild the apprenticeship ladder, reclaim your sovereignty, refuse to be the disposable shield for a society that does not deserve your sacrifice. Do not debate the wicked, mock them, outpace them, and build the fortress of your own excellence so high that their impotent rage cannot reach you. You hold the red pill, the irrefutable truth of the world. Share it. Let it burn like a wildfire through the dry rot of their lies. And now the sponsored book introduction, Navigating the Female Mind, a red-pilled guide for men. I spent years drowning in confusion, trying to be the nice guy society demanded. Women called me toxic for holding a door open, then mocked me as weak for hesitating to speak my mind. I watched friends get divorced, stripped of their homes and kids, while feminists cheered it as progress. My own relationships felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. One wrong word, one missed signal, and everything exploded. I was tired of being a puppet in a gynocratic circus where men are the clowns. That frustration drove me to dig deeper, to study evolutionary biology, psychology, and centuries of human behavior. What I found wasn't pretty, but it was real. Women's emotions aren't random chaos. They follow predictable patterns rooted in biology, like their attraction to alpha males and instinctive hypergamy. This book is the map I wish I'd had, forged from brutal honesty and cold, hard facts. If you're a man who's sick of the lies, like being told equality is possible, while you're taxed into oblivion to fund single mothers, this is for you. We'll tear apart feminist myths that paint you as a villain for wanting respect. You'll learn to decode her words. When she says, "I'm fine," you'll hear, "Fix this now." And when she rejects a sexual advance, you'll understand it's not about morality, but your own lack of frame control. Chapters like the Alpha Imperative and Escape the Marriage Plantation give actionable tools to lead without apology, while biological betas and winners uses science to explain why bad boys win and simps lose. Forget vulnerability. Strength is your only currency. By the end, you'll navigate her shifting moods like a pro, dodge double binds, and reclaim your freedom. This isn't therapy, it's warfare for your sanity. To the red-pilled men reading this, you're not broken, society is. You've felt the sting of being a second-class citizen, blamed for existing while feminist institutions profit from your labor. This book arms you with truth. It's for the rational guy who's done with mind games and ready to win. But if you're clutching a gender studies degree or think toxic masculinity is anything but a trap, put this down now. Go knit a sweater or binge woke documentaries. You'll hate what's inside because it exposes the lies you've built your life on. For the rest of us, let's get to work. Your future as a free man starts here. Navigating the Female Mind, a red-pilled guide for men, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.